Welcome to New Earth Modalities with the Ascended Masters. I'm your host, together with my guides, and I'm joined by the potent and very efficient and effective Virginia Dofflemyer. Welcome, Ginny. So happy you're here and delighted to co-create with you.
Thank you.
And thank you to you for choosing to be here, to be accessing the potent new earth modalities. And I'm super excited to be diving into all things immune system from a multidimensional perspective in this masterclass. And so, Ginny, I'm feeling like bringing in Thoth and the Council of Light from the beginning, from my perspective. And before I do, is there anything that you want to kick us off with about this idea of immunity and accessing immunity as a doorway to optimal well-being?
Well, I think that it is very current in the pandemic at the moment. Everyone is concerned about vaccination, concerned about infection. And what I have always felt in my work is that it's all about equilibrium and balance. And in the end, our systems are intelligent, they're brilliant. They're always making micro adjustments to everything that we're exposed to, from toxins and pathogens to denser energies that are emotions, such as fear and anger. So there's always this micro adjustments the body is making. And our concerns at the moment in this pandemic seem to be amplifying some of the latter, which is, to my way of thinking, somewhat to the detriment of the function of the system. So if something comes out of this, maybe people will place their focus on higher frequency emotions and really begin to realize that their bodies are not only multidimensional, but incredibly intelligent and know how to make the adjustments that are needed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll bring in Toth and the Council of Light from my side, and I know you also have this direct connection with the guides, so if you're feeling called to bring them in at this time, my sense is that could be a very dynamic contribution. So I'll just take a moment. Hello, dear ones. This is Thoth with the Council of Light to enhance joy and thereby health, wealth, and happiness. And the ray of opulent bliss moving more to the forefront of this divine transmission. So as we are beginning this co-created masterclass around the immunity and going more deeply into what that is, we're bringing forward the Emerald Ray from the Council of Light book, which is very much the you ray, for you have a unique immune system, even though there are aspects of your immune system that are universal. You also have a very unique immune system. So the Emerald Ray really amplifies your signature energy so that you're even more potently in the energy of you, in the energy of your access point. And we're taking a few moments to calibrate the space because there are infinite possibilities for this masterclass. And at the same time, we're really calibrating it to that which is going to contribute the most to you. So if you could do us a favor, and we're wording it that way, of really sending your questions that you might have around the topic of immunity and optimal well-being, then we can be receiving those questions as a way of guiding this masterclass. Because even though it's being recorded and you may not be physically present as it's being recorded, you're energetically present with us in the here and the now as we are going into this masterclass about immunity. So as we're asking you to be broadcasting your questions, this can be a little bit of a Q&A in the higher dimensions. So as you're doing us that favor, it's also dialing in the direction that we go in, because we're here to contribute to you with this very potent new earth modality. And so while you're sending your questions, we'll just check in here with Ginny, and perhaps me Thoth through Ginny, to see who's stepping forward. What is multidimensional immunity?
The sense of immunity in and of itself is rooted in a need, or a perceived need, to be safe in the face of assault, whether it's from toxins or pathogens or other energies that are unseen. There is a sense that most individuals feel that what is immunity is rooted in the physical dimension, that it is a collaboration of different systems in one's anatomy that come together to provide this protection from pathogens such as COVID-19, such as SARS, such as the common cold. And there isn't much thought beyond that sense of the innate immune system beyond whatever artificial remedies might be taken to amplify the immune system. But not much thought is given to the immune system in and of itself as being cared for or protected so that it can function optimally. And there is no thought that it could be actually multidimensional. And what I have seen in the work that is unfolding in this now moment is there's greater awareness of how all of one's dimensions and all the dimensions of the human system are interconnected, and that experience, or past experience or present, can trigger something in another dimension, and that it can translate and be experienced in the physical dimension. And yet we always think that the pains or the discomfort experienced is only in the physical. It's not inconceivable when one begins to see that you have a physical, emotional, mental, causal, etheric, electromagnetic, and so on and so forth dimension that there could be an imbalance in any one of those dimensions that is out of balance, and that it, when sufficiently out of balance, it can overwhelm other dimensions and ultimately upset or truly imbalance the physical dimension. So if the emotional dimension is over expressing, in a sense, with denser energies, you might begin to feel it in the physical dimension. And you might have, in the same vein, an experience that's traumatic in the physical dimension that triggers trauma in past lives in the causal dimension that amplify the experience in the physical dimension. And this is not different when it comes to states of illness or some other kind of imbalance. So seeing how all of the dimensions are interconnected and having in one's consciousness the awareness of bringing them all into optimal states of equilibrium, none overexpressing or underexpressing, allows the fluid flow of energy through all of the dimensions, including the physical dimension, which is the primary dimension through which you actually have awareness of any imbalance in any state of your system, the whole multidimensional system. Although one is focused on the physical, there is a tendency not to think of the other dimensions. And this class would hopefully underscore expanded awareness of those other dimensions and allow one to see how they are uniquely interconnected through a core, an immunity core that runs through all of the dimensions like a channel of communication. So when the body expresses discomfort, disease, or any form of emotion that's unpreferred, there is a sense that one will hopefully begin to track the experience in the physical to the dimension where that experience is truly sourced. You experience it in the physical, but it can be seated in another dimension. It can be seated in more than one dimension. And we are kind of like an onion. So there are layers and layers, and as those pull off, you begin to realize, okay, that's clear, that's clear. And then now you have the sense of, now the energy is flowing through you in a state of balance. And the immune system is no longer stressed from these imbalances. You have a hormone known as cortisol. It's a stress hormone. The more stress on your multidimensional system, the lower one's immunity. And so if you are anxious, fearful, angry, all of these are stressors. But so too are toxins, chemical, metal, plastic, pathogens, whether they're bacteria or viruses or fungi or parasites. These also are stressors. And sometimes people carry these in their bodies for years and years and years, and then add to it without ever having done a kind of a thorough house cleaning. More stress, and the immune system is diminished. But part of those stressors are in those other dimensions as well.
Yeah, so you're speaking about the innate immunity and how there may be the idea that the immunity is about protection or fighting off or almost this kind of survival consciousness mechanism of us versus them energy. And you're reframing that, or there's a paradigm shift of the innate immunity, the innate well-being or homeostasis of the system to always be coming back into alignment. And one of the fastest ways for that innate alignment that already exists to be illuminated further is by removing the stressors or the overlays that may be placed upon the system. So just like in the sculpting of the statue of David, there was everything removed that wasn't David. There's that recognition as you're here that we're inviting you to also be sloughing off, like the snake skin, that which you may be carrying unconsciously in your system that isn't actually yours, hence the amplification of the emerald ray or the U ray, that your signature energy and strengthening your signature energy is one of the ways of navigating this time on the Earth star, so that you are really in a resourced place. And so what we're speaking about here and what you're bringing forward is that the physical body can be a beautiful invitation to be accessing other dimensions. And you've spoken about some of those dimensions, and you brought forward the awareness of the immunity core, and that the immunity core is expressed in different dimensions, like a meridian or a pathway. And so what would you share are some of the we're tapping into the list of questions here, so give us a moment. What would you share would be some of the immediate explorations, or we don't want to say actions yet, that's kind of the question that's coming through. It's like, what can I do today to strengthen my immunity core? Like, what's a quick tip to strengthen the immunity core? So these are some of the questions that the audience is transmitting to us on the through the etheric clipboard. And we know that you have a very thorough process of when you work with clients to go through all of this. And at the same time, we're here to provide some relief for the system to be emerging in more optimal well-being. So is there anything that you would bring forward that addresses a little bit of how can I walk away with strengthened immunity core, or apply something that's going to relieve? And as you are also a master at tracking energy, we're inviting you to tune into the group that's gathered for this immunity. And maybe there is one of those causal bodies, and maybe it's the causal body, one of those bodies that seem to be most related to the suppression of the immunity core. So we know that was a lot there. So we'll pause here to see where you would pick up the thread.
So as we tap into those questions that have been raised, one might first think of what dietary changes one can make that would shift stress from the system. And of course, there are many herbal options that one might choose. But we would first say that everything is energy, and energy is consciousness. And perhaps the first step is to shift one's own conscious awareness of their connection to their own body, to actually listen to what I call the cries for help. We dismiss pains as to be expected as one ages. We dismiss a cold as it's going around. We dismiss so many of the body's cries for connection. So perhaps this would be a recommendation that one first get to connect intimately with one's own body. Know when you're feeling discomfort or dis-ease that it is about imbalance, a disequilibrium in the system, and that if one put one's focus to rebalancing that imbalance, like a teeter-totter, you want to stand in the fulcrum between the two ends of this seesaw effect. You begin to ask your body what is needed. You might ask when you go to the market, what does my body want? And listen, because we tend not to ask ourselves what would best suit us, instead of grabbing the first cold remedy or some other medication. It was often said that food is the best source of medicine. It was, for the ancient Greeks, medicine. And so it's natural. It's what the body knows to use, and it is energy. So first, as you connect to yourself, you might adjust your diet by choosing consciously those foods that would nourish you, providing nutrients that are absorbed more easily from vegetables and fruit and grains, and then perhaps a lighter amount of meats or other proteins. But beyond that, it's about shifting through one's consciousness, one's emotional body, and to choose in every now moment to be in a state of intimacy with oneself, amplifying one's self-acceptance, shifting out of self-judgment or fear of what others are thinking, so that one is really intimately connected to that emerald ray, the U ray, amplifying it and becoming more and more authentic to who it is that you are. And in that way, peace can fill the body, love can fill the body, and those higher frequency energies can transmute any anger or fear that is amplified in the collective consciousness, especially in times like these, when people are fearful of being hospitalized or worse because of this pandemic.
Hmm. And so, as you are also tuned into the group field, and we know that you have this beautiful multidimensional special offer where you have this energetic inoculation to the COVID 19 as option A in your special offer. And then in option B, you also have an opportunity to work with you one-on-one to do a very focused check on the immune system. And so we have a sense of, even though we've been kind of speaking about this in very let's say digestible words or ways, or very straightforward ways, that there's also a level of adeptness in the simplicity. So would you be open to kind of sharing your new earth modality by uh, doing a mini check or reading of the group field around COVID-19 or around the immunity? And of course, you can say no, and yet we have a sense of seeing you in your ascended mastery will also not only benefit everyone that's tuned in here right now, yet also be a way of showing what's possible from this energy inoculation that you have created with the ascended masters, and also this one-on-one check. So what's your response? Is that a yes, a no, a renegotiate?
Not sure that I have ever tapped into the energies of a group that I am not conscious of. So give me a minute to go there. So as we tap in to the first group of people, and I'm seeing maybe 5 or 6, if I scan their systems individually and okay, so the way I often work, because I am tapping in this now moment to the cortisol levels of 3 or 4 people, and they range from 10 to 15. And the optimal level of cortisol in the training that I received many years ago is about 2 or 3. So if someone's cortisol level is 10 or it's 15, I would say the person is relatively stressed. And in a sense, to give you a comparison, so if someone's cortisol level is 10, their immune system on a scale of 1 to 10 is about a 6, which is not optimal. It's a little over 50%, 60%. And someone whose cortisol level is 15, their immune system is maybe a 4. So it's 40%. So from that place, my tendency would first be to identify the stressors. And the first stressors I always check are the toxins, because people collect these, and as one ages and you haven't cleaned house from these toxins, the load gets heavier, and we keep adding things through fuel in the air, exhaust from the cars, pesticides when you go running in the fields. So clean somewhat, check for the toxins, and then I would check for all the pathogens. So it would be for bacteria, for viruses, for parasites, for fungi, and then get a read on each one of them, identify them, and whether it's a toxin or it's a pathogen, and get not only their identity, but the level of toxicity in each of the organs, because these things can be stored anywhere in the physical body. The body is so intelligent. It oftentimes can actually create a little globule or a tube around something so that it doesn't go into a particular organ. And so I often think of tumors in this way, that they are little protective bubbles in which these pathogens may reside. And so it's first to really scan the whole body to find where these stressors are, and then see if this provides a clear way or a clear path to bringing balance in the whole system. So one thing about this inoculation recording is that it does an automatic shift of the cortisol immune balance. It brings cortisol to 2 or 3 in someone's system, and it brings the immune system up. It's using high frequency energies, light language, and it's a good place to start. It makes the system stronger and therefore not subjected easily to COVID, very specifically, because that's what it was designed for, and for all the variants. But it does not clear the toxins or the pathogens. That would be the purpose of a one-on-one, to really get to the bottom of where the imbalances are and really bring strength to the whole of the multidimensional system. It's not to say that a 30-minute one-on-one will clear all of that, but it will give one a sense of where these imbalances lie, and ostensibly in that 30 minutes, though some of those things could be addressed and cleared, so that the next step could be seen in terms of rebalancing everything from neurotransmitters and hormones to whatever other imbalances are presenting, even if they're in another dimension, as in the causal dimension. Sometimes it's in the etheric dimension. That's where all your meridians and your chakras are. Or it could be in the electromagnetic dimension. And sometimes it could be in more than one. It's a process, because the system is very complex. But I found it amazingly rewarding to bring all of these pieces together and allow an individual to begin to see themselves in a wholly different way, as a much larger and much more complex and beautiful system.
Thank you. So we invite you to vibe into this opportunity to receive this energetic inoculation for COVID, and to also add in a 30-minute one-on-one to really be scanning in particular what may be the carrying, which of the dimensions may be carrying a lot of overload that then compromises the natural innate immunity and immunity core. And so as you've been kind enough to be sharing that, as you've tuned into some in the group, that the cortisol levels are high and that the causal body keeps coming up as we're tuning into the group field. And we know that this would be more working with the group immune system. And this is what we're also curious to explore, as you really have embracing wholeness as your whole body's whole health, your business. that there is a recognition and there's a lot of conversation about herd immunity, group immunity, and this idea of those such as yourselves that are on a path of higher consciousness and really using the high vibration and frequencies to cultivate an aligned immune system by, of course, your own immune system. And yet that idea of new earth and being one in wholeness, that there is not only your immunity and your lifestyle, yet also the collective. So what else would you add about the causal body? And is there any group transmission for, let's say, the spiritual community or those that are on a path of higher consciousness? That feels like it's enough because we know you're a tracker to kind of catch the scent of what we're going for and then follow it from there.
What I have experienced oftentimes, and I'm thinking in a more recent situation, that one can be physically unwell, and it can trigger, I mean, and everything is in place for it to change, but because of the nature of the illness, let's say it was a Lyme's disease, it triggered in the individual trauma in the causal dimension of multiple lifetimes of illness and despair. And it was that level of despair and hopelessness and powerlessness that was actually having the greater effect on the recovery than what was going on in the physical body. And once those overlays in the causal dimension were dissolved and brought into a 0 point energy field for that resolution, there were other layers that were tied to a need to sacrifice oneself on behalf of others. So there can be multiple layers within the causal body, lifetimes that were associated with one issue or with the other. And so each of these overlays is once tracked and resolved, it allows the flow of energy through the whole multidimensional system to shift, because the imbalance in the causal body starts to realign itself, and that is transmuted or transmuted, I guess, translated into the physical dimension. And recovery, amazing. It's like, oh, the problem was experienced in the physical, but the major cause was in these other dimensions, especially layers within the causal dimension. So as I tap into the group, if I'm looking there, the individual with cortisol level of 15 So what I'm sensing in that particular instance, and maybe even the one with 10, that there are myriad overlays in the causal dimension. So if I were in the instance of the one with 15, to clear what comes up first, There could be as many as 300 overlays, and we theoretically shifting this, resolving this, cortisol level went from 15 to 5, and that's fairly dramatic. So that would suggest that there's another set of overlays that needs to be examined, and that too would bring the cortisol or the stress hormone down and the immune system back online. So it's all about the seesaw and the balance. And once you begin to see how that works, it really becomes quite magical. You just go, oh, I do this. And in the same way, I tend, when I work, to create a supplement vortex of whole food and herbal supplements, all positioned energetically, programmed energetically. And so no one has to remember to take anything. They don't have to buy anything. It's there because it's energetically present to support the system to reboot or reconstitute those organs that are weakened. And when that is introduced into the system, you begin to say, oh, now we're fine-tuning those imbalances. And the physical dimension, when it gets stronger, can contribute to other dimensions.
Yeah. And so as we're looking into the Akashic records in alignment with your free will and conscious choice of the group field, there's also a recognition of what you're speaking about in terms of past lives or alternate lives that are happening now, or however each of you have your way of looking at that. And we look at the group field of those that are really ambassadors of New Earth, such as yourselves, the visionaries, those that are most likely empathic, healers, highly sensitive, that you have a mastery with energy, and that there have been a lot of alternate lives where to be speaking your spiritual truth has, and to be visible as the magicians that you are, has ended in being beheaded, burned, tongues cut out, all of those things, not to get National Geographic on you all. And yet the sense of, in particular, those that are already on a path of higher consciousness, that from our perspective, as we also work a lot with clients to really liberate your divine light mission, what you're here for, that the physical body can be a distraction of really fulfilling your mission. Now, it can also be, like Ginny, what you're bringing forward, a doorway into deepening into your mission, because that whatever's unfolding is perfect. It's a part of your mission. And yet, is there anything that can be particularly nourishing or supportive for what we're calling the spiritual community, to be, in a sense, bringing these alternate lifetimes, tying back to what you first said about immunity, that immunity is thought to be that first line of defense, or that it is this kind of, there can be an autoimmune system. So what we're tuning into, it's almost like the autoimmune response of the spiritual community to sacrifice, to overgive, to be in this space as well of holding back, of being the best kept secret, of not sharing the highest level magic. Because just what we're talking about here, that you have downloaded with the Ascended Masters with us, an energetic inoculation for the COVID-19 virus, that's spiritual wisdom that can be perceived as controversial or whatever those things are. So there's also the immunity of what others, caring what others think. So we know we're talking about a lot of different things, but it is a little bit of a hairball. So in your experience or in the group field, have you found that those that have a very potent mission to contribute to New Earth, that they often will have physical disease or pain or fear of speaking out or those kinds of things?
Of course. I mean, if I speak for myself, I would say that when I began doing this work, um, it was really about the physical body and nothing more. And I was blessed to have some amazing instructors. But I was always pursuing issues with my own body. And at a certain juncture, my own body was quite imbalanced and healthy, and yet I had extreme pain. And I knew in my own knowing, my inner knowing, that it wasn't sourced in my physical body. And that's what began the journey of looking elsewhere. And it became clear that the source of the physical pain was in another dimension. And I began exploring. I would say that, and that's how I came to see that the physical body is just the doorway in to getting to know yourself. And yes, the physical body is the first 3 rungs of your staircase, but after that, it's about pursuing and exploring the other dimensions to see how they are connected to what you're experiencing in the physical. Hence the immune core. And using that as the elevator through your whole system. And if all the dimensions are aligned, then you have that possibility of really fine-tuning and expanding your unique signature energy, your consciousness throughout all the dimensions, and being even more potent to bring your mission forward. But yes, I would say that our missions, such as they are often such a presence in who we are. And we may have the experience of being secret, as you say, or tendency to be silent. But this also goes back to causal dimension lifetimes where it was unsafe. And I think many of the ascended masters who have come forward or are coming forward in this time are really working through shifting into this new paradigm to expand multidimensionally, unpack the other dimensions of themselves, and dissolve these overlays to step into greater potency, to bring this work forward for themselves, of course, but for everyone else who's coming forward at this time. It's amazing how easily some of these things can be addressed in a fairly short period of time without old paradigm understanding of what I view as a sort of a smaller box, a more limited perspective of health or wellness through that lens of medical or alternative practice. Energetic work, spiritual work, is a much larger box, and energy moves. It is easy to amplify and can transmute denser energy much more rapidly. So there are many new things available, lots of tools to explore. So there is that place where much is shifting. And I wake up sometimes amazed at new insights in a single night's sleep with, oh, I didn't think of this. And so there is that place that, yeah, your mission is can't avoid it. If the more you connect to your own inner knowing and your higher self, your I am presence, there is a place where it's unavoidable.
We would just bring forward for the group field here, anywhere through any time space dimensions where you may have had past lives or alternate lives around silencing your voice or your mission or your modality or what you're here for, that's creating this cortisol in your causal body of fight or flight or freeze, that we're inviting you to bring that back in the wholeness, back into the source from which it came. And as we're continuing to amplify the emerald ray, the U ray, we're also inviting you to recognize what we've been speaking about here is your multidimensional wholeness and your multidimensional immune system that resides in many dimensions of you. And so what we often support clients with in the Divine Light Activation and the Magdalene Codes of Love programs is really activating not only your vertical field, yet also your horizontal field, so that you are operating in many more dimensions at once and in a state of wholeness, so that there can be even greater field of consciousness. So when anything is coming towards your field that isn't aligned with your signature energy, it doesn't get so close to your physical body. It's all happening outside of your physical body and in the higher dimensions, and you zig, and something that's not aligned with your path zags. So we're just inviting you to really take a breath here and to have a sense of your innate immunity having been strengthened from being here together with us in this masterclass, that your immunity core is being invited to be further aligned and polished and deepened into. And we invite you to pick up off the altar this special offer of the energetic inoculation for COVID and the variants, and also adding in a one-on-one session. And we're just going to bring this masterclass towards a place of completion, inviting you to take a few breaths, that you may stretch in any way that you are called, and inviting you to connect with Ginny in her special offer. And we're extending much love and appreciation to you, Ginny, for your new earth modality that you brought forward, and to each of you for your presence in this powerful masterclass. All is light and love, and we are all.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Visit newearth1.com.